Welcome to Cursed TV, where shadows whisper and the night comes alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. Turn off the lights, relax, and let the stories begin.
Story 1. It sounds like the job offer of a lifetime, right? House sit a creepy old mansion for a year, become a millionaire by the time it's all over. But I knew things were never going to be as simple as they seemed. They never are when that much money is involved. My employer, Jeff, a guy I've only contacted via an IRC chat room, offered me a 5-day trial period before signing me up for a 1-year contract. That seemed like a reasonable request, and I'd be able to pay off the rest of my student loans with the money from that trial week alone. I would have thought it was a joke, until he sent me a $1,000 payment up front and promised to send the rest later. I knew I was getting into something shady. I expected to be house-sitting a house full of stolen goods, drugs, or worse. Jeff deflected all of my questions about the place, and when I felt like I was starting to piss him off, I knew to shut up. The last thing I wanted was for him to withdraw the job offer and give it to some other broke student. Monday, 3:20 a.m. I made my way to the mansion in the early hours of Monday morning to begin the trial. It was a misty night. I had no problem being there at this hour. I've always been a night owl. Still, I was 20 minutes late. Jeff waited on the street by the mansion gates to greet me. He kept his voice low, but revealed a strong Australian accent. "You made it. About bloody time." I shook his hand and introduced myself, checking the place out at the same time. It was in a state of utter disrepair. The building had been neglected to a shocking degree, as if it had been left alone for 100 years. Otherwise, it looked like your stereotypical mansion with long white pillars by the entrance, and huge swathes of grass field surrounding it. Jeff seemed to be in a hurry. "Now, I've done all your chores tonight, so just make your way to the basement and get settled in." "The basement?" Jeff pulled out a sheet of paper. "Right. I've got a full list of rules here, but for tonight you just need to keep quiet and make your way into the basement. Wouldn't want to wake the tenants. Always lock the basement door behind you. There's other people staying here. Ghosts, mate." I feigned a smile, thinking it was a bad joke or that Jeff was a lunatic. Nevertheless, I was determined to play along. The money was good. Jeff helped me get my bags out of my car, insisting I park it outside of the estate on the street. He handed me a key and a folded-up piece of paper in a plastic sleeve. "I've left the front door unlocked for you to get in. Keep it unlocked, all right? Remember, just quietly make your way to the basement and stay there. Lock the door." Jeff unlocked the gates to the estate and I began walking up to the mansion. The noise of Jeff locking up the gate with multiple chains and padlocks made me take one last look back at him, to which he just gave me a thumbs up. The mansion was a wreck. There wasn't even a doorknob to turn to enter the place. It had fallen off long ago. The place looked like it had been ransacked long ago. I moved through the entrance hallway to see graffiti covered the walls, and syringes were littered around the floors. Some of the more untouched rooms I passed were caked in dust. Finally, I reached what had to be the door to the basement. It led me down some stairs. The basement actually seemed somewhat cozy, like someone had actually been living here. A decent bed, a TV, and one of those old antique phones with a rotary dial that take ages to call a number with. There was even an old PlayStation 1 console and a few games. I pulled out Jeff's list of rules, unfolding it. He had crudely written them down with a blue pen. "Stay in the basement and keep the door locked. Only leave the basement from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. Each night, turn all the lights off. Unlock all the entrance doors. Turn off the living room TV if it's on, otherwise turn it on. If you see anyone else in the mansion, hide. Never talk to them. Never let them find you. Try to keep the lights off and keep the volume down. You don't want to attract any attention. Help yourself to anything in the fridge. Make friends with the dog, give it a treat each time you see him. Answer the basement phone when it rings, but never say anything. Hang up if the call goes on longer than a minute. Never leave the house. The exceptions being Friday 3 a.m. I'll be waiting for you by the gates. I checked my phone, 3:45 a.m. I went up the stairs to the basement door, then closed and locked it. Heading back down the stairs, I resolved to play some PlayStation games, assuming that Jeff left them behind to keep me from losing my mind to boredom. Monday 7:11 a.m. I was beginning to unwind and unpack my bags, when I heard the faintest noises come from above me. They sounded like muffled talking, and I couldn't make out what they were saying. I wondered if what I was doing was even legal. Do these people know Jeff? Is Jeff a squatter and I just took his place so that I can take the blame when these people inevitably come down to the basement? I wondered who they were, the original owners of the house. Drug addicts? The police? I thought it would be best just to keep quiet and get some rest. I had brought some earplugs for just such an occasion. I checked my phone as I lay down in bed. No service and no Wi-Fi. Monday 5:13 p.m. I awoke to a large banging against the basement door. Someone was knocking on it, with a closed fist or a hammer, I don't know. I kept quiet until it passed. I felt peckish but hadn't packed any food with me. I reread the list a few times over, trying not to forget anything. I thought about how I hadn't seen a dog, and wondered where the hell the fridge was meant to be, because it certainly wasn't in the basement. I kept on playing on the PlayStation for a few hours to distract myself from my hunger and the muffled voices upstairs, deciding to wait until 1 a.m. to search the house for food. Tuesday 1 a.m. I stared at my phone for a few minutes until it was finally 1 a.m. The voices stopped long ago, I guess they left or fell asleep. I half expected to see someone waiting for me as I unlocked the basement door. I was damn creaky as I slowly pushed the door open. I was very much aware that Jeff knew there would be other people here, and for whatever reason he wanted me to do my chores without ever alerting my presence to them. I had so many questions, but I still had student loans to pay off, remember? I could hardly believe what I saw. The house that was last night in such a terrible state was fully repaired and looked amazing, even in the darkness. I had to pinch my arm to convince myself I wasn't dreaming. I actually went back into the basement, carefully remembering to lock the door, and spent a while letting my mind race about what the fuck was going on. Tuesday 1:20 a.m. I finally mustered the courage to unlock the basement door a second time and open the door. The mansion was still in amazing condition. It looked very lived in. I had wondered if it was time travel, a portal to another dimension, or an elaborate prank. Maybe Jeff was some kind of Hagrid and this is how he likes to introduce magic to people. I made my way through the mansion, quietly exploring it. It didn't take long for me to find the kitchen and steal some cake from the fridge, remembering Rule 5. Help yourself to anything in the fridge. I also made myself a few sandwiches and brought them back into the basement for tomorrow. I'll admit, I also grabbed a sharp kitchen knife and carried it around the halls with me. Some of the lights in some rooms were on, so I turned them off. I found entrance doors, the front door, the door in the west wing, and the door in the south wing that led to a massive pool. I sort of wanted to explore the whole property and have some time outside the creepy house, but Rule 8 held me at bay. Never leave the house. I found what had to be the living room. The TV was on, but only showing static and making static noises. I turned it off. I felt something touch the back of my heels as I did this and almost yelped aloud. It was the dog. A skinny old Jack Russell Terrier, wagging its tail. Its eyes were such a dark shade of brown, in this darkness I couldn't even make eye contact with it. Its collar tag read, Chester. I led Chester to the kitchen and gave him a small slice of ham from the fridge. Tuesday 3:50 a.m. By this time I had explored all of the rooms that didn't have closed doors. Chester followed me the whole time, no doubt hoping for more treats. I ended up just sitting in the living room petting him for a good hour, making sure to keep track of the time. After cleaning my teeth, I finally made my way to the basement door. Shit. I forgot to lock it. I didn't even close the damn door. I felt like an idiot. But in my own defense, I was a little distracted by the whole entered a new dimension / discovered magic thing. I figured it wasn't a big deal as nothing had gone wrong that night. I pet Chester goodbye and went into the basement, remembering to lock the door behind me this time. I went down the stairs dreading that some horrible monster or ghost would be waiting for me at the bottom. But all was fine, thank God. I put some ear plugs in and checked my phone again. Still no service. And still no damn Wi-Fi. I guess they don't have any Wi-Fi even in this new mansion. Tuesday 3 p.m. I woke up from some dumb nightmare to the antique phone ringing, the noise overpowering my earplugs. I remembered to answer the phone but say nothing. But to be honest, if I heard Jeff's voice I would have asked him what the hell this place is. I heard the voice of a middle-aged man. Hello. A long pause. Hello. Anyone there? Another long pause. Click. I let out a sigh of relief. Followed by a minor metaphorical heart attack as large knocks started hammering against the basement door. Something is trying to get in. Wednesday 1 a.m. I grabbed my knife and the house key, and left the basement. Remembering to lock it behind me this time. The house still looked really, really good. Many of the lights were turned on, illuminating its brilliance. Try to keep the lights off and keep the volume down. You don't want to attract any attention. I started my chores by turning off all of the lights that I could. There was one room with a closed door that I could see light shining out of. I was conflicted but opted to keep the door shut. The last light switch I turned off scared the hell out of me. "Honey, is that you?" came from a corner in the darkness. It was a man's voice. The same man from the phone. I didn't say a word, just slowly backed out of the room. A moment later, I heard the light switch turn back on. And the man left the room, turning on all light switches in his path. I didn't even bother with the rest of the jobs that night, I headed straight for the basement. I heard a window smashing on the second floor, followed by a blood-curdling scream from a woman like someone was being murdered. A woman screaming, pleading frantically for help. I ran for the basement, locking it behind me. Wednesday 3:45 a.m. At this point I was freaking out. I knew I had to do the chores. They were so damn specific I felt like I'd be killed for not following them. But those people, those ghosts. They were out there. The house had been mostly quiet for an hour, but I heard someone walking around heavily upstairs. The phone rang. It was Jeff. A drunk Jeff. "Mate, is that you?" "It's Jeff." A pause. I wanted to scream at the man. But I knew I shouldn't say anything to the phone. "Hello. Cindy, is that you? Are your parents there?" Another pause. "Look, just tell your dad I need a lift. My damn car's broken down and my shift starts in an hour. I gotta go." Click. I sat down on the bed, defeated. I knew I was going to make it out of here alive though. Whatever weird, reality-bending shit was going on, I was going to make it. My knife held tightly in one hand, the key in the other, I unlocked the basement door, locked it behind me, then started turning off all the lights. Streaks of blood covered the floors. Like someone had dragged a body around the house, I never followed the blood as it led into darkness. I just turned off what lights I could, turned on the living room TV, unlocked the doors and then made it back to the basement with only seconds to spare. I locked the door behind me, obsessively turning the doorknob again and again to make sure I had definitely locked it. I didn't get any sleep that day. Thursday 1 a.m. With what little battery my otherwise useless phone had, I woke up from an alarm I set for 1 a.m. I eventually got so tired, around midnight, that I knew I had to have a nap for the nightly chores to come. I was also starving at this point. I hadn't eaten anything since Tuesday afternoon, those sandwiches I took back with me. I did all my jobs, practically ransacked the fridge too. The blood streaks from last night were gone. And you better believe I held that knife tightly in my hand the whole time, my little pathetic protection against whatever otherworldly horrors were going on. A new room was open tonight, the light left on. I was shocked to see someone in the bed there. It was a girl's room, pink walls, unicorns and princess decorations, all the stereotypes. Big letters painted onto the wall spelt Cindy. I figured this was the girl Jeff thought he was talking to last night. The slightest noise behind me and I spun around, seeing Chester looking up at me wagging his tail. I reached into my pockets pulling out a sausage I had for just this occasion. I kneeled down and gave it to him, trying not to wake the girl. In the light, I saw Chester's true eyes for the first time. They were fully black, devoid of color. Even the sclera, the white part of an eye beyond the pupil, was fully black. Daddy? In a split second, I simultaneously leap up from my knees in fright and began running, while looking back at the girl. I only saw it for a second before I was out of the room, but the girl's eyes were fully black like Chester's. Ear-piercing screams came from her room. I ran like hell down the hallway, a light came on in front of me, and I darted off to the side in another room. A man, the father I'd already heard from, came running down the hallway, past the room I was hiding in and into Cindy's. Cindy was screaming and sobbing uncontrollably. All I heard from the father were soft words of comfort. I snuck my way towards the basement, locking the basement door as always. Thursday 6 p.m. I got some much-needed rest. Thank God for Jeff's PlayStation, because I was desperate for anything to take my mind off the situation I was in. I took a break to listen to the loud knocking on the basement door. This time I slowly crept up to the basement door and pressed my ear to the door when the knocking ended. It was the father, mumbling and grumbling about something I couldn't quite make out. "Hello," he said through the door. I froze and my heart stood still. It was like he knew I was on the other side of the door. I didn't say a word, and a moment later I heard him walk away. Friday 12:50 a.m. I heard footsteps above me. I had never heard footsteps this late before. So I opted to do my chores later, in case any one of those things were roaming around. Friday 1:10 a.m. Screaming, that blood-curdling woman screaming from upstairs. This time muffled due to me being in the basement, but no less horrifying. The phone rang. I hesitated, but answered. It was the woman, pleading for her life, begging for help. She kept giving the address of the mansion. I didn't even hold the phone to my ear. I laid it down and stood in the corner of the basement with my fingers in my ears, then after a minute came back to hang up on her. Friday 2:40 a.m. Jeff said in his list of rules that he'd be waiting for me by the gates at 3 a.m. So I guess I could finally leave this messed up place. I didn't bother packing my bags. I didn't want anything slowing me down. I left the basement, locking it for the final time. The floors were streaked with blood again. I did my chores, and didn't come across any trouble. The house was dead silent. Chester appeared, worryingly wagging his tail. I gave him a treat, it seemed to cheer him up. That dog is always hungry, you'd think nobody feeds him. I left through the entrance door. It was a misty night again. I followed the road to the gate, with Jeff waiting there for me. How'd it go? I didn't say anything to him. Folding my arms both from the cold night air and extreme uncomfortableness. Jeff unlocked the gate and handed me a suitcase full of cash, $14,000, he told me. As he turned to leave, I couldn't help but ask. Jeff, what the hell is this place? Jeff paused for a moment, the house of the dead. The house of my old friend. He murdered his wife and daughter here, and all of their souls have haunted this place since. I don't get it, why do you need someone to do all this stuff? The less you know, the better. Your single-year contract starts on Monday, if you'll take it. Message me over the weekend, alright? I nodded. Jeff got in his car. I asked one final question before he drove off. Jeff, did you try to call me, or was that the ghosts? Jeff just looked at me quizzically, then frowned and shook his head no. Monday 3 a.m. I did my research on the place. Who the hell wouldn't? I was about to live in the damn place for a year alone with my only company being an undead ghost dog. The father and Jeff were co-founders of a wealthy business involved in importing/exporting. I know the official story, but if I don't survive this next year of my life I want to put my suspicions out there. Jeff murdered that family. He went mad, because they were haunted him for it. Eventually Jeff figured out to end the haunting from ghosts, you must haunt them first. I am a distraction, that is my purpose. Turn the lights off when they should be on. Distract the ghosts, make them forget that they're dead and that the man who took everything from them is still out there. I should care, but the money is good. Story 2. I had recently taken up a job as a night security guard at the old Belmont Hotel. Rumors had circulated about strange occurrences and ghostly apparitions haunting the halls. I don't believe in paranormal stuff, nothing crazy ever happened to me. So I went to the hotel to start my first night. The ambient was, to say the least, very strange. The hotel looked pretty old and almost abandoned, that gave me a first bad impression of the place, but I didn't care about this because as everyone says, don't judge a book by his cover. So I fastly moved on and went to the manager's office to get the instructions I needed for the shift. The manager looked pretty nice, the office was pretty different from the rest of the hotel and this room looked a bit more modern. Without giving me chance to properly introduce myself correctly, he instantly handed me a set of rules, emphasizing their importance for my safety. I glanced at the sheet that looked kinda normal at first and as I made my way to the tiny security guard office, my eyes narrowed as I read the instructions. Rule 1, never leave the security office unless it's time for a routine check. Under no circumstances should you wander the hotel alone. Rule 2, take a walk around each floor every hour. If it takes longer than 15 minutes, seek refuge in a nearby room until the time is up. Rule 3, answer all calls coming through the security room phone. If it's a staff member, continue the conversation. Otherwise, hang up immediately. Rule 4, if you hear knocking on the security office door, hide in the nearby storage closet and do not open the door. Rule 5, if you hear unusual sounds like crying or laughter during your rounds, return to the security office promptly. Rule 6, if you spot a shadowy figure on the security cameras or during your rounds, close your eyes, turn away, and seek shelter in the nearest vacant room. If no rooms are available, count to 360 and then open your eyes. Rule 7, camera may not capture disturbing images. When alerted by a low-pitched beep, maintain unwavering focus on the camera until it turns off. Rule 8, as your shift nears its end, resist the urge to fall asleep. Stay awake and alert at all costs. Rule 9, keep this sheet of paper with you at all times. It holds crucial information. The manager assured me that the rules were essential for my safety, but doubts crept into my mind. Was this just an elaborate prank to test my nerves? Regardless, I decided to heed the instructions, reminding myself it was better to be safe than sorry. Hours passed in monotonous routine. I completed my rounds, checked the cameras, and resisted the creeping drowsiness that threatened to overtake me. As the clock struck 3 a.m., a piercing ring startled me from my weariness. I picked up the phone, my heart racing. Hello. I answered cautiously. A voice crackled on the other end. It's Emily, the night receptionist. I need your help. Something's not right here. My breath caught in my throat. Was Emily in danger? I glanced at the cameras, hoping to catch a glimpse of any unusual activity. Yet, everything appeared normal. I couldn't ignore her plea for assistance. "What's happening, Emily? Are you okay?" I asked, my voice filled with concern. But before she could respond, an eerie silence fell over the line. Then, a low growl reverberated through the receiver, followed by Emily's blood-curdling scream. The call abruptly ended, leaving me paralyzed with fear. I dropped the phone immediately. What happened to Emily? Is she okay? Is this part of the prank? I couldn't think correctly at that moment. All I knew is that maybe, if I don't follow the rules, things can go very wrong. Something is not right here. After what happened to Emily, I really needed to know if she's safe. I needed to confirm that nothing wrong is happening in here and it's just a product of my imagination. I knew outside could be dangerous and the set of rules that I were given were spinning on my head these hours. Against my better judgment, I stepped out of the security office, gripping the rules tightly in my hand. The hotel corridors stretched out before me, shrouded in darkness. As I made my way to the reception area, an unsettling silence hung in the air. The dim lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Each step I took echoed through the empty halls, amplifying my unease. The rules, now crumpled in my hand, reminded me of the precautions I should have followed. But it was too late to turn back now. Reaching the reception desk, I saw no sign of Emily. The area was abandoned, with the desk covered in a layer of dust. A cold chill crawled up my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That strange feeling when you're in a corridor and you have many doors around you, feeling that something is about to jump from some of those doors. A sudden movement caught my attention from the corner of my eye. I turned toward the hotel's grand staircase, and there, standing at the top, was a woman in a tattered white gown. Her long, disheveled hair cascaded down her shoulders, and her pale face wore an expression of eternal sorrow. Fear gripped my heart as she descended the stairs, her ghostly form gliding silently toward me. It was as if time had slowed down, each step she took filling me with a growing sense of dread. I struggled to recall the rules, my mind clouded with panic. Just as the apparition reached the final step, I remembered Rule 6. Rule 6, if you spot a shadowy figure on the security cameras or during your rounds, close your eyes, turn away, and seek shelter in the nearest vacant room. If no rooms are available, count to 360 and then open your eyes. I closed my eyes and turned away, seeking refuge in the nearest vacant room. My heart pounded in my chest as I entered the room and locked the door behind me. Inside the room, I took a moment to catch my breath. The silence was deafening, and the only light came from the flickering bulb above. I wondered how long I should wait, how long until the threat had passed. Minutes passed like hours, and my mind raced with uncertainty. Should I dare to peek outside? Would the ghostly figure still be there, waiting to claim me as its next victim? The rules seemed both a guide and a curse, offering guidance yet plunging me further into the unknown. The curiosity won and I didn't wait more. I approached the door and slowly turned the handle. As the door creaked open, a sense of relief washed over me. The hallway was empty, devoid of any supernatural presence. I cautiously stepped out, determined to continue my investigation. Now I knew that something was happening and that I needed to follow the rules if I didn't want it to suffer the consequences. I retraced my steps, making my way toward the security office. Glancing at the cameras, I noticed a flicker on camera 9. A low-pitched loud beep filled the room, and my attention was drawn to the screen. A figure appeared, its features distorted and blurred, as if torn between realms. Then I remembered Rule 7. Rule 7, camera may not capture disturbing images. When alerted by a low-pitched beep, maintain unwavering focus on the camera until it turns off. So I forced myself to maintain unwavering focus on the camera. The figure's presence grew more menacing, its gaze piercing through the screen, reaching into my very soul. Sweat trickled down my forehead as the seconds ticked by, the pressure and weight of the moment almost unbearable. I couldn't look anything else. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished. The camera returned to its normal view, as if nothing had happened. I let out a shaky breath, grateful that I had followed the rules. But my relief was short-lived. A distant sound caught my attention, a soft, mournful cry echoing through the hotel. It seemed to come from the depths of the building, beckoning me toward an unknown fate. I followed the sound of the mournful cry, my heart pounding in my chest. Each step I took felt heavier, as if an invisible force sought to hold me back. The hotel's hallways twisted and turned, leading me deeper into its labyrinthine depths. As I ventured further, the air grew thicker, suffused with a sense of despair and dread. Shadows danced along the walls, whispering secrets I couldn't comprehend. The rules clutched tightly in my hand felt like my only lifeline, the thin barrier between the world of the living and the realm of the supernatural. Finally, I reached the hotel's abandoned ballroom. The once grand space now lay in ruins, its ornate chandeliers shattered, and the dance floor covered in a layer of dust and debris. But amidst the decay, a faint light flickered, drawing me toward its source. I approached cautiously, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The light emanated from a small side room, its door slightly ajar. With a mixture of trepidation and morbid curiosity, I pushed the door open. What I witnessed inside was beyond comprehension. The room seemed to exist in a twilight realm, suspended between the living and the dead. The walls pulsed with an otherworldly energy, pulsating with eerie hues of blue and violet. A cold gust of wind swept through the chamber, chilling me to the bone. In the center of the room stood a figure, bathed in an ethereal glow. It was a woman, her features ethereal and translucent. Her eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, and her flowing gown seemed to billow without the touch of wind. She reached out toward me, her hand beckoning, her voice a haunting melody. Driven by a mix of fear and a desire to uncover the truth, I approached the gramophone. As I drew nearer, the music intensified, its haunting notes reverberating through my very being. The room seemed to sway in rhythm, the walls pulsating with an otherworldly energy. With a trembling hand, I reached out to touch the gramophone. The moment my fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through me, jolting me backward. The music grew louder, more dissonant, as if it were trying to tear apart the fabric of reality itself. Suddenly, the gramophone exploded into a shower of shards, its pieces scattering across the room. A deafening silence followed, broken only by the sound of my own labored breathing. I stood amidst the wreckage, my heart pounding in my chest. From the shattered remnants of the gramophone emerged ghostly apparitions, each one a twisted reflection of the suffering souls that had been trapped within the hotel's walls. They reached out toward me, their spectral hands grasping for a hold on the physical realm. In a frenzy of panic, I stumbled backward, desperately trying to evade their touch. But they were relentless, their translucent forms moving with an ethereal grace. One of them, a woman with hollow eyes and tattered clothing, lunged toward me, her outstretched hand inches from my face. Summoning every ounce of courage, I dodged her spectral grasp and sprinted toward the exit. The other apparitions pursued me, their wails and moans echoing through the corridors. Shadows writhed and twisted around me, threatening to ensnare me in their clutches. As I raced through the labyrinthine halls, I could feel the presence of the supernatural entities closing in. Their grotesque forms brushed against me, leaving a chilling residue on my skin. I could almost taste the despair that emanated from them, a bitter reminder of their eternal suffering. With each passing moment, the hotel itself seemed to come alive, its walls pulsating with a malevolent energy. Doors swung open and shut, revealing glimpses of spectral figures trapped in perpetual torment. The very fabric of reality was unraveling, and I was caught in its nightmarish grip. I could see a faint glimmer of hope, a flickering exit sign indicating the path to safety. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I pushed my body to its limits, desperate to outrun the relentless pursuit. Just as I reached the exit on the top of the building, the hotel seemed to convulse. The hour was now 6 a.m., unleashing a torrent of supernatural forces. The floor beneath me crumbled, revealing a chasm of darkness. With no time to spare, I leaped across the gaping void, narrowly escaping its clutches. Many hands emerged from the exit door at the roof, and then started appearing on the floor, blood stains and more disgusting stuff that I don't want to mention. I almost vomited, but I knew I had to push my body to the limits to escape from here. The ghosts were all around me, all hope was lost, but I saw something white in the corner and I fastly approached to it. It was a piece of paper that said the following. Rule 10, if you're reading this, you're probably on the roof, which means you probably got caught. If that's the case and only if it's the case, jump off the roof. I hesitated to jump, it was too high and the floor was pure concrete, but then I felt many hands trying to grab my legs. I saw them, their faces corrupted by the most obscure presence that this building hides, people from all ages with their faces completely corrupted and deformed. I knew that I didn't have much time to think, so I took the only option I had. I jumped off the roof expecting the concrete that would probably break all of my bones. But it didn't. As I landed on solid ground, I turned back to gaze at the crumbling hotel. It stood as a testament to the horrors that lurked within, a place forever tainted by the suffering of lost souls. With a mixture of relief and sorrow, I watched as the entire structure collapsed into itself, consumed by its own malevolence. At this point my body couldn't resist more and fell to the ground. I woke up at the hospital and I saw a paper on the desk. Hey, I saw you did a great job at our hotel because we saw you have lots of skills to survive at night, so that's why we want to offer you a second job. We'll call you soon and don't forget to join us. Emily is with us, we are still here. Story 3. Many years ago, a group of 12 of U.S. teens went on a backpacking trip to a Southeast Asian country during term break. Among the things in our itinerary, we had wanted to stay in a mini theme park casino hotel area situated high up in the mountains. Only thing is, we were bad at planning to say the least, and pretty much just thought we could bunk anywhere, take any room in any hotel. We didn't book in advance. It was peak season unfortunately, and when we got there, no good hotel could accommodate us. In the middle of the night, carrying our large backpacks, we had to wander far from the lights of the main resort, down into the other side of the dark, desolated mountains. See, other than the resort located at the very top of the mountain, there were very few people living there, nor were there many establishments around the other areas of the mountain. It was dead quiet. The journey to find a place to spend the night at 11 p.m. was unnerving to say the least. The mountainous areas away from the main resort were completely devoid of life and tall trees surrounded us from all sides along the main path. Beyond these trees was an unmanaged dark forest and pretty much no one ever went up into the forest. For obvious reasons, low human traffic in places other than the resort, the street lamps around this area were poorly implemented as well, and the entire area was pretty dark, mainly illuminated by the dim pale glow of the moon. We walked quite a distance in these conditions until we saw a large empty car park, with a rather dilapidated hotel in the middle. There were what seemed to be a smatter of large black char marks at the side of the hotel, creeping up all the way from the 3rd to 9th floor, indicating that there had once been a relatively huge fire there in the past. On all sides of the car park you could only see tall intimidating trees looming ominously, obscuring the light from the moon. The only light from that area came from the rundown hotel building, without any street lamps to illuminate the car park. Clearly, this area in general had been neglected for quite some time. The car park was desolate. In fact, there was only one dusty car parked near the hotel building. To be honest, some of us in the group were very apprehensive about staying here, but between walking aimlessly in the eerie silent woods, staying out in the cold of the night mountain air, and staying in a, at the very least, hotel-type establishment, the choice was clear. Either way we would only be staying for 3 nights, what could possibly go wrong? The interior of the hotel was a lot less menacing than the outside. Though evidently aged and slightly musty, the professional smiles of the receptionists at the front desk assured us this was a functioning lodging space. We asked for rooms with the cleanest living conditions and they booked us in at the highest open floor, the 12th floor. For whatever reason, they told us that 2 of us had to be located in a room relatively far away from the rest, as they had other patrons on that floor and there were insufficient consecutive rooms for us. This struck us as odd because the hotel seemed extremely quiet and at times we wondered if we were the only guests. Nevertheless, we agreed. Me and a large burly friend decided that we would take the corner room for 2, as we didn't care too much for games through the night and constantly interrupted sleep. The corner room seemed peaceful enough, and well, someone had to make the sacrifice after all. This roommate was the person in the group of 12 that I had known the least. He was a transfer student who had just joined my class at school recently. He was a religious foreign, from Africa previously, classmate, older, and his habits, culture etc. were all very new to us. There was much we did not know about what he did during the time before he knew us. That and his imposing stature, exotic, unfamiliar appearance, to a teen at that time, made it slightly more intimidating to be trapped alone in a dark room with. However, from my interactions with him, he seemed rather mild-mannered and quiet, so I was not opposed to sharing a room alone with him. "Is this hotel haunted?" one of my friends half-jokingly asked the receptionists. They paused for a moment, looked at each other, and gave an ambiguous, polite smile to him as if he had just told an inappropriate joke. The elevators were small and could only fit about 9 people crammed side by side. Me, my roommate and this other guy took the second lift up. Strangely, the lift stopped at the 6th floor on the way up and what we saw when the doors slowly parted, spooked us. The entire floor was pitch dark, the walls were charred and everything was burnt black. It was clear that after the fire had devastated the level, no attempt to repair the damages had been put into place and the entire affected floors were condemned altogether. We peeked outside the elevator and there was not a soul in sight who had pressed the floor button, so we figured it must have been a glitch in the elevator system. It was a really old hotel after all. We talked about this with the other group of 9 who had just gone up. They mentioned that their lift, on the other hand, had mysteriously bypassed the 12th floor and stopped at an unnumbered floor just above, presumably what was once the 13th floor. Once the lift door opened, what they saw sent shivers down their spines. It seemed like that floor above held some kind of singular unit right at the end of the corridor, perhaps what might have been an old presidential suite. The door right in front of them was completely sealed up from top to bottom with thick metal chains, boarded with wooden planks and stuck with spirit-warding amulets and Chinese talismans. The entire floor was dark, with the only source of light being the creepy red candles lighted in the front of the door. Clearly, the management of the hotel was greatly disturbed by whatever was in there and had gone to great lengths to keep it from being unleashed onto the residents of the hotel. They said they had frantically mashed the buttons to close the doors and got down to the 12th floor. To be honest, contrary to all we had seen thus far, the 12th floor was not too shabby. The hallways were decently lit and cleaned, though there was a musty old carpet smell that filled the air. All in all, it seemed livable, unlike the nightmarish scene we had encountered on the 6th floor. Me and my roommate made our way to our unit, ironically numbered 1212 at the end of the hallway, next to the stairwell. Upon entering, a gust of unusually cold air engulfed us. The room was clearly worn out, with dark stains on the wall, heavy scratches on wooden furniture and creaky beds. The toilet, well, it was much worse. The mirror was slightly cracked at some areas, faucet had heavy indented scratches, and we could have sworn we saw traces of long hair and what seemed to be residual dried blood stains at the dry corners of the tub. There was a dreadful heavy feeling in the room, but neither of us knew why we felt like that. We had an early rest that night, and although the toilet lights switched off mysteriously and the toilet flushed on its own in the middle of the night, we chalked it up to a faulty switch and continued sleeping. Nothing much happened that night. On the second night I had problems sleeping, having drunk too much energy drinks at the theme park that day, and stayed all the way up till 3 a.m. in the morning. Lying in my bed, playing with my handphone. If I recall correctly, it was at 3:16 a.m. that night things started to get weird. The TV suddenly switched on by itself with nothing but static on the screen, then turned itself off. The toilet door slammed incessantly and the faucet sounded like someone was repeatedly turning it on and off 3 times in a row, every few seconds. Somewhere from behind the walls beside my bed, you could hear the muffled whispers of a lady continuously uttering, "Where is it? Help me find it," but that could have been guests from the room beside. Despite all this, my roommate somehow managed to stay fast asleep, leaving me to face the horrors. Suddenly, everything stopped and the room was eerily silent again. I turned to look at my roommate, silently hoping for him to have been awoken by the ruckus so I had some company. No reaction, he was facing the ceiling, blissfully unaware of what was happening. 10 seconds of foreboding silence passed. Suddenly he turned towards me, eyes still closed, and said in a deep, unnatural, raspy voice, "I'll kill you." I stared at him in shock, half expecting him to jolt up. Nothing. It seemed like he was still fast asleep. Was he, sleep-talking? I did not sleep that night. The next day, I complained to the receptionists that the next-door female neighbor was causing quite a ruckus at night and disturbing our sleep. The receptionist shot me a puzzled look and told me the neighboring unit had been vacant for the past month. The last night was the worst. I did not have much problem sleeping that night as I was absolutely exhausted, and dozed off at about 10 p.m. At around 3 a.m. again, I suddenly woke up to the screech of furniture moving in the unit above and violent frantic footsteps. I rubbed my eyes sleepily and wondered what all the ruckus was about. It was then that I saw 7 black figures in the room. 6 of them were standing around my roommate's bed, staring at him, 2 on each side of the bed. One stood at the entrance of the toilet facing the bathtub. This figure seemed to have its neck craned downwards looking for something on the ground. At that point of time I thought that my roommate must have invited our other friends in or something while I slept, so in my groggy state I did not pay much heed to the black figures. After all their attention seemed to be focused on my roommate. Tick. Tock. Tick. Tock. Everything was eerily still. All of a sudden, he started moving strangely. The bed sheets rustled wildly, and I realized he was actually slithering off the bed upside down, arms pulling his sleeping body along, one at a time. Upon reaching the floor, he plopped down, motionless, facing the ceiling. Freaking out, I flinched. Immediately, all the black figures rapidly swiveled around in sync. The figures had their attention on me now. They knew I was awake, they knew I had seen them. In tandem with the figures, my roommate violently arched his back, head hanging upside down. With an erratic jerk, he contorted it to the left, where I lay. I was absolutely terrified. I knew I was cornered in this dark room. My only source of light was the tiny glow seeping through the gaps of the curtain. I could barely see where I was going. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I'll kill you." He chanted these lines fanatically on the floor, arms and legs twitching wildly. His eyes were still shut. At that moment I turned my back, frantically searching for my handphone, hidden somewhere in between the pillows, for some light. "I'll kill you." A menacing whisper blew across my left ear and I felt 2 cold hands brush my neck. I instantly jumped out of the bed in fear. There he was on the bed right behind me, head upside down, crawling up from the floor beside my bed. His hands were poised to strangle me, fingers outstretched and tensed in a peculiarly inhuman manner, lips quivered into a creepy grin. I dashed towards the main room light switch and flipped it on. In an instant the room was flooded with light. My eyelids slammed shut and I flinched for a second, adjusting to the sudden influx of brightness in what was a pitch-dark room just an instant ago. When I opened my eyes, the black figures were gone and my roommate was sprawled out on my bed, asleep, completely ignorant as to the terror he was just a minute ago. I noticed that the rosary he kept by his bedside had snapped into little beads as well. I took a chair, sat down and watched him the entire night with the lights on, fearing he would start attempting to strangle me again, if I fell asleep. Trying hard to stay awake, I whipped out my phone and began looking up the history of the hotel. Woman found beheaded in gruesome hotel murder, August 16, 1998. 30-year-old lady violently beheaded by her husband with a chopper found missing from the hotel kitchen. Her body was found floating in a pool of blood in the bathtub with her head placed next to the faucet on top of the tub, eyes still wide open in terror, facing the door. I took a look at the pictures. One of them was a picture of the room taken from the outside. Never had seeing 4 numbers given me such a feeling of dread. Room 1212. It was our room. I glanced at the toilet door nervously, and instantly felt a cascade of goosebumps rush down my spine. It was as if her gaze never left the door. Apparently the arrested husband swears he had been sleeping that night and woke up suddenly to find his wife murdered, with his hands covered in blood, holding the chopper. No one believed him. Police ruled it a homicide. Till this day my roommate has no idea at all about what happened that night. I told him he was sleepwalking and that I was playing games on my phone the entire night after waking up and not being able to sleep. My friends all know what really happened, but we agreed that keeping it from him was the best thing to do. We found out from the janitor before leaving that the room at the unnamed floor was once the site of a traditional folk ritual that the hotel owners had organized in 1997 to ask for spirit help in boosting the ailing hotel business's occupancy. Apparently the ritual went tremendously wrong, and all 6 of the mediums invited lost their minds and started decapitating each other with kitchen knives, smearing the entire room with blood. That year, a massive fire devastated most of the hotel as well. The unfortunate incidents finally stopped when they brought in a renowned temple priest to seal the room.